paranormal. To join in on the internet, go to www.portaltalkradio.com. Now, Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, your doorway to the spirit world, brings you your hosts, Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas.
Number is 877-786-0562. You can also join us in the interactive room on Paltalk at www.paltalk.com under social and political issues and select Paranormal Radio Network.
Thanks, Angela. You know, Angela, I want to also, too, include your own website on there, which is www.october, which is OCT 13 baby, BABY.com. And I also want to remind our listeners that they can receive lots of information on your site. And also, too, that I know that we got a lot of listeners who were looking for readings last time and wasn't able to get in the hour where we were doing the readings and stuff, and to remind them that they can also contact you and arrange a reading with you at your site. And I'm going to repeat it again. That's www.october, which is only OCT13baby.com on here. You know, there's a couple things I wanted to do, and I normally don't do this, and I, in reality on it, but I have to say there's a couple of my friends, my close friends and stuff, that I really want to give them a little plug for their business that they're doing on it, along with another organization that really needs our help. And the person who owns this site is Olga Hernandez, and the fact is she started a new business out. She's it's through a psychic advisor program, and you know, they have a huge variety of different types of readers there. If you're unable to reach Angela or I, and you can't seem to book an appointment with them, please take the time and do go and look at their site. It's www.ourspiritualconnection.com, and it's worth taking a look at also, too. I also want to let our listeners know that on our website that there is a Humane Society. It's a dog. I'm going to say it's a dog kennel. It's called Town and Country Humane Society. This animal shelter has been taken over from a very special lady. She got elected to help this animal shelter, and it's in risks of being shut down because of the funding. They have no donations. They need donations. And there's about 40 dogs there that are in risk of being put to sleep. So go to our site and look at it. It's under, their website is www.shelterpals.com, and they really could use our help. So if you're an animal lover, you know, do what you can. You know, any donation is accepted. No large or small on it, doesn't matter, but they really do need our help. It's a good place. So anyhow, on that one, on it, Angela, before we move on to the show, what the show is about today, do you want to explain who our guest is?
Yes, today we're having Dr. Barry Tass, and he will be sharing his latest investigation on the murder case of actress Sharon Tate and four of her friends. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the case, the murders that were done by the Manson followers, and those followers, along with Charles Manson, are now serving lifetime sentences in the state of California. Now, even though the house was demolished after those gruesome murders, and, new houses were built in its place, the events that occurred in August of 1969 did leave an imprint of energy on the land. So Dr. Barry Taff will be discussing what type of activity is there and what he has documented.
Well, he also worked on that case that was in San Pedro, California, where it was Dr. Barry Taff with Barry Conrad also, too, who is a photographer, a paranormal. And there was a man, one of the guys that was on their team went up into the attic of this place and, lo and behold, was attacked brutally up in the attic. There was a rope actually placed around his neck and hung up on a nail, and where this ghost was actually trying to hang him. Spooky case in itself that I don't think that, excuse me, but I'm not going to be done by going back to his place. After, an invisible rope shows up and leaves all these marks around your neck. No thanks, I'm not coming back. I think the person who lives there needs to get out, on it. But, and then the fact is with the entity case, too. I mean, that entity case, that would have scared, it would have scared me to death. The fact is, I don't know how much, if I'm having a ghost that's actually sexually attacking me, yeah, I have to say I would get a pretty big baseball bat on that one.
I would as well. Now, Tuesday, wasn't there a movie that was called The Entity with Barbara Hershey?
There was. I mean, of course, Hollywood, they always dramatize everything. I mean, they always have to make it to where it's extremely, negative on it. It's going to sell. But I did go last night and read over some of the articles that were written up on that particular case, and I'll have to tell you, it was very interesting. But what I found interesting enough is that what they say about poltergeist activity is that the fact is that she was the only one that actually seen this energy, this spirit that was around her. She could see its face. And although she described there was three actually that was holding her down, two separate entities was holding her down, and the other one was raping her. Ooh. But the fact is, nobody else ever on the case actually ever seen the entity. They just seen the special effects, say that it would put off. The glowing, the weird lights going on. They did see her where she was laying there, and they had seen something impressed on her breast. They did see certain movements on her, but they never did see any type of apparition or anything as far as the visual, knowing exactly what it was. But that lady was haunted a really long time on that case.
Well, isn't that pretty typical, though, of we'll just call it the victim of a poltergeist, that perhaps they are more privy to seeing that poltergeist versus, our neighbors or maybe another family member?
Well, there has been more and more documentation on poltergeist, and the fact is whether poltergeist is just the name for another type of spirit, or the fact is it has its own unique energy in itself, one that's completely different from what we would say a human spirit is. They are doing or leaning more towards where the fact is that children are involved with their energy. The fact is the puberty that goes on between, more leaning towards the girls than it is the boys, and that they're manifesting the energy themselves with this. And I hate to say that that's a lot of guilt on a kid's shoulder, thinking that the fact is that some of this nasty activity that goes on with these type of spirits is that a kid thinks that it's coming from them because they're turning of age of 13.
Right. But would a child typically think automatically that they are the cause of it or the parent's child? I mean, as I understand it, a lot of poltergeists are manifested by telekinesis, and they say that is from maybe a disturbed adolescent that is going through maybe highs and lows of the hormones, or experiencing frustration or emotional tension in the household. So do you think that a child would automatically say, ooh, this weird activity is actually my fault? I mean, do you feel like it's a conscious or an unconscious thought process of the child?
Well, first of all, there's got to be an enormous amount of fear that's going to come from a kid that's feeling anything touching him and they can't see it at first, or anything. Because the fact is that poltergeists can be cruel. They're very spiteful. And here it is, this kid, has to worry about, the normal everyday life of growing up, and all of a sudden they start feeling something that starts, taking the covers off of them or starts touching them in a certain way. And the fact is that things are all of a sudden starting spinning in the house. Things are being tossed aside. And I think the enormous amount of fear also enhances it. Fear brings a lot of adrenaline. It brings a lot of energy off of our bodies. It's been documented over and over again about the fact is, oh, you know what, I just seen an orb that just flew right by my head just now. I'm sorry.
Woo! For those of you that are unfamiliar with Tuesday Miles, she does have one of the most proactive, spiritually filled houses that I've ever known about. So, if she does make a comment about an orb flying by or a particular spirit in her surroundings, then she's literally sharing her experience with us.
It's hard. When you see those, you know that the fact is that orbs are the speed of lightning, that, you kind of have good eyesight to see that. But back to where I was at. On the same sense, though, Angela, where I was at, where I was talking about the fact that the kids, they have fear, that's, that's about the energy. The fact is that they've got the hormones going on there. That's going to put on a lot of other separate energies. It teeters back and forth. The fact is that is this a manifested spirit energy, or is it a spirit in itself that's just absorbing all of this negative energy that's coming off of the kids on it? And the debate's going to go on. It's going to keep going on and on and on. And how can we prove it?
Well, I like to think that, there's many causes of a poltergeist. In other words, I feel that we should not try to place just one cause in a box, but rather open our minds, especially those that are actually doing investigations and the research, open our minds to other theories. Now, interesting enough, some people believe that poltergeists are really an unconscious psychokinesis on the part of the living. So in other words, unconscious thought processes produce the phenomenon by the living's repressed anger and hostility.
Well, it goes into that telekinesis, or the what is there's another word I want to use for that, but it ranges in the same definition on it. The fact is that the telekinesis, the energy. I mean, they did a study on this one little girl where they actually put her in a room and had her concentrate on bending the spoon on it, and she eventually did. The fact is she's a child. She has no known psychic abilities. But then again, she was able to bend a spoon. I mean, that's how much energy this 13-year-old child had with this. The characteristics from a poltergeist. The fact is that it seems to be that they're offensive and they're timid and the noiseless and the malevolent and stuff like that. And the poltergeist is on the opposite on it, where they're saying that the mischievous, destructive noise, cruel, erratic, thievish, demonstrative, purposeless, cunning, unhelpful. I'm reading you off all these notes I had taken on it. Malicious. It goes on and on and on and on. Now, I felt at one point when, and this was about 6 years ago, when I really noticed a lot of the activity in my house going on. And I had 2 kids that were going through their puberty stage in life, and they'll probably kill me for saying that. But anyways, I did notice some activity that was suggested it could be poltergeist activity. A lot of things moving in the house. Seems like there was just this massive energy moving in the house. Never really anything that would show as an apparition, but something that you could see. The ceilings would change colors. I was thinking somebody slipped me something in my drink.
Right.
Curtains flying up, beds moving, sheets being pulled off the bed. It was horrible. It scared me a lot. It scared us all a lot on it. But then it seemed like it lasted. This one lasted for about 3 months, and then it just stopped.
Well, now, as I understand it, poltergeist activity can come on in a few days, come on suddenly, last a few days, or it can even last a few years. But now what you're describing is pretty typical of a poltergeist activity as far as their duration in the environment, and that's a few months. Did you ever experience any, terrible odors or maybe light bulbs spinning or bursting, or did your telephone go haywire?
Well, when you mentioned the odor, there was an odor which we actually had the health department come out. Now the odor didn't come throughout the house. It stayed out in the backyard, which was really weird. We got back out there, and it just smelled like this. It was indescribable. It was like burnt flesh almost. Where it actually you couldn't stay out there with it because it just made you sick. And I had, of course, wanted to document the fact is that, okay, if it's something else, let's get the experts out here as far as the health department goes. And I had some other organizations come out, even the gardeners would come out to see if one of the plants were stinking up the place. They couldn't understand what it was. It would last a few minutes while they were there. It would stop. And then later on, it seemed like, it would all of a sudden come up again. There was no consistency of it. And yet they couldn't find anything to explain what the stench.
So now, did that disappear once your poltergeist activity disappeared?
It seemed like it did. It only stayed, my thought was that we didn't really have it all the time. It seemed like it was, to me, like reaching for, things to create or to cause chaos with. It was, not reacting to what it was doing. And that was one of the things that, try to keep your head in the right spot where you're not losing control and you're not freaking out about all this what's going on around you. But I think that's really, to me, is what it really was trying to do. It was trying to make us react.
Well, now here's the thing, Tuesday. I know from a personal point of view that if I had some type of mischievous spirit or spiritual activity in my home, I'm going to stand up and take notice. But I have to tell you that I would be rather concerned if a poltergeist, maybe assaulted me by, biting or scratching or even spitting. And I have read about poltergeists even spitting. And to be able to generate that sort of energy in order to spit, bite, scratch, touch, whatever, then that is some tremendous energy. So I would be kind of skeptical, not skeptical, but frightened if a poltergeist was in my own environment.
Well, sure I would. I sat earlier today and I watched this. It was on YouTube. It was a case that was out in England where, and this was back in 1977, where a 13-year-old girl, there was a lady with four kids. She was a single mom. And it just showed up one day, just showed up all of a sudden. And the kid was basically going through where she was levitating. It was even levitating her. She was making, she would go to talk in her normal voice, and some other voice was coming out through her. And I thought to myself, this doesn't sound like a poltergeist activity, but the fact is that that's what the paranormal investigators deemed it as, is poltergeist activity. But the fact is it's debating. You're going to go out there and research what poltergeist activity is, and I have one researcher that says, well, their intentions are not to harm their client, or the sitter is what they call them. And yet I've heard on other accounts where people have been really hurt by them. The flying objects, it seems like that, for whatever it is, like a magnet. It's almost like, it's almost like they're on the other side of the room, and all of a sudden it almost feels like it's a magnet energy where that object is just being pulled and very forcefully. It's not something they're just tossing. I mean, it's being thrown across the room in a very heavy force that if you don't duck and you get hit by it, you really could get hurt on it, and that's where I think I would have became with this woman that had the 4 kids. I would have got me and my kids out of there. I don't think I would have put up with having these investigators sit there and study us.
Oh, I wouldn't either. As I understand it now, the typical characteristics of a poltergeist often has those flying objects. And so you're describing how it almost is like a magnet happening. But I've also heard like rocks come out of nowhere, dirt is being thrown out of nowhere, things are broken or at least damaged and things of that nature. I got to tell you, I ran across several theories, and there are 3 specific theories that are a bit older, but I believe that they deserve some time and attention, especially for those involved in research. And one of the theories I found Tuesday, the oldest one, is that the poltergeists, they're spirits of the dead. And, you have mentioned, our past guest Peter James has mentioned, like in life, life and death, right?
That's right.
But there's another theory that goes a little bit further, and what it says is that a spirit or an apparition, is already there in one's environment, and then it takes over the personality of the living. And it can then, of course, appear as an apparition-like form. The third one, however, is the one that I find like, wow. And I think that we ought to pay special attention to this, because what they suggest is that one's own powerful emotions or powerful thoughts, now that is whether it's unconscious or conscious, can literally produce enough energy that will manifest itself into a poltergeist. In other words, it's literally, that energy is literally leaving that individual's mind and body, and literally that energy is being formed and then can come back as an apparition and, of course, go through all of the poltergeist activity that, we've discussed. So I think that we ought to take special note of that, because I know you and I have talked before, both of us being psychics, that sometimes we do go into an environment where someone has experienced a lot of chaos in their life, or they've been deeply depressed, and we've talked about those negative entities. And so these theories that I've read about kind of makes me wonder, are those negative entities that we've come across really and truly a poltergeist?
Well, the characteristics, and the only way that we can keep, comparing the activity is by people who are studying this, that come across activity that is like poltergeist, and documenting it and writing about it. It's the only way that we can actually compare notes on really about what is exactly poltergeist versus a negative energy on that, Angela. It's just, they have other studies where they actually went and involved with the right side of the brain versus the left side of the brain. And the fact is that, and even Dr. Barry Tapp will bring this up, that I was speaking to him, and he feels that there might be an underlying condition of epilepsy in a person who has a poltergeist haunting. And it does say in several other articles I've actually come across is that the fact is that, with the cases with the split brain patients, they said like the epileptics, it's something that's underlying it that they're not aware of. They're not yet aware of it. They don't have any idea that the fact that they even have epilepsy. But with epilepsy, the fact is that it does generate a lot of I wouldn't say so much energy, but the fact is that, it's moving those brain waves. It really does set the brain waves. And, all of the stuff, I mean, they're really, I think they're very close to seeing exactly what is causing the poltergeist. But, my theory on that is that when I was experiencing this, is that I kind of felt that there was spirit that was already present. We already knew that spirit was present at the time this started. And the fact is, it's true. And now it does, we've documented well that the fact is it has a lot to do with kids. It's not always the case. The majority of them has to do with the kids, mostly girls. And the fact is that it just seemed ironic that the energy coming off of the girls, the fact of it is, with the fear, I'm not fearing with that too, because I do believe that adds to it. Seems to me that the spirits that were around at the time on it might have absorbed this energy, and it's like having a spirit or a ghost go haywire. They've got so much energy that they've absorbed. I mean, it's like an overload of them, and the only way that they can wear down themselves is by doing all this stuff. I mean, they completely become chaotic, which they don't even know subconsciously what they're doing themselves. But then again, there's been where they've had communication with the poltergeist. It was knocking on the walls, and they'd ask the poltergeist, "Do you understand us?" Knock once, knock twice, "If you understand us," and it was corresponding with them on it. There were ways of automatic writing. It showed that it was doing this. It was going through on that one case with a little girl. She was speaking, and her voice was not the same. There was a different voice coming through there. Now, myself on that, I don't believe a whole lot about possession. You know that. I just don't go there with that on it. I just think that the fact is that we really have to give up our own bodies for something else to come in on it. But I don't know. All things are possible. I keep myself open-minded on it. That maybe it's not a poltergeist. Maybe it's being, misdiagnosed. Maybe the fact is it's just a really bad negative energy who's had a really bad day.
Yeah, but Tuesday, I have to ask you though. You just said about a little girl speaking, and the voice was totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So, that may not be necessarily a poltergeist, but would that not be considered sort of like a possession? And I don't believe that anybody voluntarily out there, or at least the sane people of the world, would not volunteer for any type of bad energy to take over or to utilize their body as an instrument to speak. I mean, of course, we do have professionals like trans mediums and things of that nature that do that. But when we speak of children and, their vocal cords being used by a spirit, then, I have to question, is that the poltergeist? Is that an evil spirit? Or is that something that the child themselves has manifested? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, during this video that I was watching, it was the lead paranormal investigator on the case was also questioning the little girl. The fact was is that, here she found some way to get attention, and the fact was is that, let's try to change our voice into a deeper form and talk like we got, we got this raspy old man's voice, and whether she was doing it on purpose. And so they found that the fact is that they did some studies, even with her voice box, that the fact is that having her try to lower her voice deeper was, maybe somebody could do it for a minute or two, and the fact is they're going to have a really bad sore throat from doing it.
Sure.
They put her in the hospital for a couple months, not for a couple weeks, for a couple months, and did all kinds of studies on her. She came out healthy, ironically that the activity didn't follow her in the hospital, but did resume when she returned to the home. So,
Now, so that would make me question whether or not it was actually the child's environment, what may have been happening, let's say, with her siblings or her parents or whomever was in the household, that if she was removed from the environment.
Right. Well, her parents were divorcing at the time, so they did speak about that. So that was very interesting itself. And you're on to something there. Exactly. Absolutely, Angela. The fact is, I do believe maybe the environment has a lot to do with it also.
So now, what are your feelings about that? Staying with that same, let's just say the same child is removed from the home, and let's say child goes to live with grandma. Do you feel that, if grandma's environment is very calm and soothing, that the child still with those feelings or those repressed, let's say anxiety or anger, would also bring a poltergeist activity to grandma's house?
Well, now, see, with, then again, there's the studies about it. I've read up on a lot of the other cases. It didn't show that the fact was that they were followed from the poltergeist. Once they left that environment where they were at, it seemed to be that it would calm things down. Didn't stop it completely, but it did completely calm things down. So, that's very interesting to see that the fact is that the high amount of energy in the place where that child was living, did associate with the fact maybe it did increase the activity, and it has to. Considering that the fact is that, everybody's in chaotic, the parents are up in a roar, the parents are probably very afraid, and these siblings are there on it, they're having people in and out of the house, I just don't understand people these day and ages. The fact is that if they felt that there's something that was really not nasty in their house, stick around for it. I just don't understand. People, your listeners out there, if you got something that's that nasty, get out. At least let something calm down and let other people take care of it or deal with it. But the fact is, for you to sit there and be tormented night after night and day after day, it's just ridiculous.
So, if it is truly from, let's say, circumstances that a child would have to deal with in their own personal life, let's say the divorce of mom and dad, I'm wondering if counseling by a psychologist or a psychiatrist can offset that activity. In other words, to help that child move through that anger or that hostility. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would hurt on it, but the fact is that remember that we're going back to the hormonal energy that's radiating off of these pre-puberty kids. That's the thing about it. That's not something you could put a lid on. It's just basically we've all, even us as all adults, and have gone through that. And it just, and like our parents would say, well, they're going through this. It's got to work itself out. and once that you go through that, then it seems like you balance out your energy then again. I mean, but it's like a pre-teenager on steroids. I mean, it causes a lot of chaos with it. And then what can you do?
Right.
You can't stop it from the body going through its natural process, and yet you can. Obviously, it would not hurt to get some therapy in regarding that. I could think it would help maybe talk about it, but I just don't see how. The fact is that how to put a cap on the hormonal energy and the sphere that goes along with this stuff on it, Angela. It's just there's got to be a solution somewhere along the line, because the fact is that more and more it's coming up with these type of cases about poltergeist, and it all seems to keep leaning almost towards the same information. But yet again, too, to get an investigator to stick with you through the whole process, day in and day out, which I give credit to these one investigators. They were there. They spent the night at these people's house. They didn't leave them. They were right there by the side. Well, I think that was really cool. That was a really good thing. But then again, I think it also fed the little kids. I think it fed them. I think the fact is that maybe it was enhanced a little bit. I think the fact is that they went overboard with it.
Well, perhaps poltergeist or paranormal investigators out there who may be listening may recognize that there is a need for them to stay longer and perhaps even come up with some type of solution if they can't afford to, hang out throughout the entire investigation. Perhaps there's a way that somebody could be placed on a retainer in order for them to be able to stay and assist. Now, Tuesday, I want to go back to something you said that you discussed with Dr. Barry Taft, and that was about those with epilepsy.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you were saying that, I was wondering about those that are in a mental institution, and of course I know that epilepsy does not mean anybody's insane. Of course, it's a brain damage, and that energy gets collected where that damaged spot is. But if there is some type of brain damage or some type of brain injury that would cause energy to collect in the brain, do you feel that those places that would be like, let's say, a psychiatric ward or a psychiatric hospital would be filled with poltergeists or anything like a negative entity?
Well, I sure feel sorry for a lot of those people that are in there for schizophrenia, though, and I mean, if we're going to go through mental, conditions on people, that some of these people generally are probably being haunted by something that is unseen on it, Angela, and here they are put into an institution because the fact that modern medicine says that the fact you hear somebody, talk to you that you are schizophrenia automatically, not really follow through with the real characteristics of what somebody is that has that disease. Epilepsy in itself has got to be a horrific disease on it, and I don't know if I should call it a disease or a condition, but the fact is that it's horrible for anybody to have it. But, they do have the technology these day and ages to hook the brain up and follow what the brain waves are. Now, they did this also, too, and I hate to keep going back to this example, but this is a really interesting video where they actually did that on this little girl, and the fact is that and they did this in the home, when it seemed that this poltergeist entity was near the child, her brain waves would go chaotic. You could see it. It was just a needle on this EKG, ETT, whatever it's called on. Correct me if I'm wrong out there, listeners. Don't send hate mail. But interesting enough to watch as the needle would actually become chaotic around it. When there was that increase of energy that seemed to succumb her on it. And then the fact is that she wasn't noted with epilepsy, but the brain waves actually did change when the activity was more prominent around her.
Goodness gracious. Well, Tuesday, I do want to go back to our first show together, and I want to talk to you a little bit about your interview with Peter James. And, we had a lot of email asking questions about the Queen Mary. So I, of course, did a little bit more research about the Queen Mary and, some of the happenings. I mean, we know that there were luxury passengers or leisure passengers on that ship. There were soldiers on that ship. There was at one time prisoners on that ship.
Mm-hmm.
And some died of natural causes, while others had a little help along the way. And, but, in my findings, I heard on the news that the Queen Mary is up for sale. Now, have you heard about that, or is that true?
That's true. I heard about that also, actually. I went in and read a report on it. Howard Bell, who's the acting CEO on the ship right now, I mind you that the fact is Howard's done his best, but the fact is this ship is it's been there a long time. It's been there 40-plus years in Port of Long Beach. It's running down. It's run down. It really is. There's a lot of things that need to be upgraded on the ship. It's actually struggled the whole time being there. They have it as a tourist attraction. It's a real big ghost attraction. They have all kinds of different events on the ship. But the fact is, the ship has never made a huge amount of profit. And so, my thought is on that they have these new interested buyers for the ship. And I keep thinking to myself, are you not looking at the statistics on this ship? Are you not seeing that the ship, if it's not going to make profit in 40-something years, what are you going to do something new? Is it the fact that because of the area, which I truly believe, it's not just the Queen Mary anymore, there's a huge area surrounding the Queen Mary. Is it because of the imprinted energy that's there? Is it the fact that it's failure to strive because the fact is there's been a lot of negative energy that's come off this ship? There's been tons of tragedy on this ship. Can it really affect the way that things run on it? The fact is it's not a moneymaker. And yet these people, we're talking $49 million that they want to pay for this ship. That's not a little bit of chunk change. That's a whole lot of chunk change.
Well, now, do you feel that the imprints of the energy that's there now will really affect the sale, let's say, to a new buyer? Obviously, with someone already interested in purchasing it, if they fall out of the ball game of purchasing and a new buyer comes up, do you think that, that energy, that leftover energy, will really affect the entire purchase of it all?
I think it will. I think they need to be realistic about this and look at it and see, is it that the fact is they're not doing the promotions on the ship? They have all kinds of promotions out there on the ship. They have advertising on the ship. They've got a lot of things offered to do fun things on the ship. I mean, it's basically it's a floating, fun zone for it. But the fact is that, whatever they've done, they keep saying, well, we can do this better. We'll be more successful on it. I just don't see any more greater ideas that's going to come up that's going to put this ship on the plus side as far as profits go. And the fact is that, and more, and I've heard this a lot lately, though, more and more, people private investigators or paranormal investigators that are going to the ship are saying, I wasn't that impressed about the activity that's on the ship. Well, hello, the fact is that, how long have these ghosts been on this ship? Do you think they're going to get tired of saying boo and doing their haunting? They've really come down to the bottom of the ship. And the fact is the bottom of the ship is not really open to the public anymore because there has been some events down there that they felt that could be dangerous to the public. So they actually stopped doing the tours in many of the different rooms down in the Queen Mary in the bottom of the ship. A lot of some of the deaths all occurred down in there, and they figured it's just not worth our risk to bring our tour guests down there for, some excitement on this. But I noticed myself, too. I have to say, I noticed myself, too, the decline on the activity in the ship. Although, mind you, now, don't take me wrong, Peter James has done a lot of work on that ship and has discovered many on that ship. They do have another psychic that works on the ship now. Her name is Erica Frost, and she's done some discoveries on her own. But again, too, with the comments made from many of the other people that have been on the ship, the activity seems to have really calmed down, and maybe it's about time. Maybe these ghosts are finding their way out from home or something. Either that or it's the fact is too with the residual energy, Angela. Residual energy, I believe in myself and what I've seen in it, what I've studied about it, researched about it, I do believe that residual energy, imprinted energy, has an effect on an area.
Well, I believe the same thing. Now, for those listening out there, can you explain what an imprint of energy is?
An imprint of energy can actually, it's just like your thumbprint. When you take your thumbprint and you push it down on the ink and then you push it down on the table and all of a sudden you move it back and you see what's left there. It's like anything else imprint. It can be anywhere from a tragic event, something that was very negative at the time, leaves a scar. It leaves a leftover scar of that energy in the area where it occurred at. We all agree You know, I would say most of us, 99% of us, all agree that we are made of energy, that we are basically, we come from energy, we have energy, we work with energy, everything's energy. Well, you know, when you traumatize energy, it's going to stay traumatized. You know, can you heal it? You know, some say you can heal the energy from there. Maybe you can on it, but it does leave its mark in the spot and the area for which that tragedy happens on it. From the wars, I'm sure that many, you know, I mean, have you ever walked into a place where you felt like, ooh, it just doesn't feel good in here. It just feels really creepy or eerie. It just feels nasty.
Absolutely.
And why is that? There's nobody around. Why would it feel that way? Because of the leftover imprinted energy that's been left there on it. You know, back in the, you know, in was east, I would say east or northwest, wherever it is on it, where they have all these wars at. You know, I mean, in a lot of the war rounds and stuff where they had all this tragedy. You walk across that land and you can feel it the minute you step foot on it that something bad happened there.
Well, now, a lot of people have reported seeing battles take place. I mean, not like an epic film or anything, but they've seen literally soldiers falling or shooting or running, et cetera, et cetera. So now, imprints of energy also, Tuesday, would that not be considered an imprint of energy versus, you know, say a haunting on that property?
Yeah, I think so. I would say you can call it. It's one of the characteristics of it. You can call it the same thing, imprint. If you want to even say residual, you can on it. It's just like a broken record. It plays itself over and over and over and over and over again. You know, and this is interesting on that, Angela, because on my block, in my area where I live at, I live down about 3 miles up off the beach, and about 2.5 hours from Mexico, on the border of Mexico, where actually there was travelers that actually from Cortez and all his soldiers came up through the pass, through San Diego, down through towards Long Beach right here, because there was fresh water streams here. And the fact is there was a lot of you know, the battlegrounds here. There was some battlegrounds. I wouldn't say a lot, but there was some battlegrounds. They had some Indian reservations here where they, you know, the Indians put up their, you know, they claimed their area, and of course, you know, our cowboys and Indians didn't get along most of the time on it, and there was a lot of deaths. And I kept getting these in the pictures. We kept getting these in the pictures over and over again. I kept thinking, well, you know what? I never seem to get these spirits to respond to me.
You know, you mean they got pictures of the actual spirits?
Oh yeah. I'd get, like, you know, men in their uniforms, and I get cowboys, and I get these Mexicans with the sombreros on them, and I get horses. I get pictures of it, what to me looked like it was Indian women that were, like, you know, squatting down where they were washing something in the stream on it, and you know, and they would never pay attention to me. They would, you know, usually if you've got, you know, something that's you know, a real authentic spirit ghost, you know, they kind of skedaddle as you get closer to them, and they paid no attention to me at all, that I was even around them. So, you know, finally putting two and two together, I thought, you know what, these things, they're imprints.
Well, now, I know you have a lot of spiritual photos, so would you share your own website to the listeners? Because I have to tell you, I have seen actually 3 videos, but 2 longer ones. I think they're about 9 or 10 minutes. Will you share your website so our listeners can go to your website and view that?
Yeah, that's off my personal website, and of course it's www.tuesdaymilez.faithweb.com. I haven't domained it yet. I'm still on the Faith Web on it, but you can reach me there. I mean, you can also go on the portal site and click on my link below my name and go to Spirit Photos. I love taking pictures. Pictures is one of my favorite things to do on it, and it seems like I get a lot of cooperation from the ghosts. You know, I just even talk to them just if I settle down. I'm just taking your picture. Don't get yourself all upset and everything. You know, but you know, yes, I do. Thank you, Johnny. I hear one of our listeners in the virtual auditorium reminded me that I do have a couple of videos on YouTube, and those are named the Ghost of Long Beach and the Ghost of Long Beach 2 are in heaven yet, and you can also view. I have a couple of videos that I made out of my still photos that I think I am pretty proud of. I like them a lot, actually, on it. And also, Angela, on our site, and we're coming up to break pretty soon, but on our site, on www.portaltalkradio.com, you can go on to odd pictures, and that link is now working, and I've got some photo albums that I put a bunch of pictures on, and then below that you can actually mouse over the picture that's in that photo album, and it'll tell you what it's about. And if you go to click on that picture, it will actually enlarge it for you. So I urge the listeners, send in your photos. We'd like to add you to the pages there. We do have a certain area for our listeners, submitted photos, and send them in on it. So we need to go over one more thing before we go on to break, Angela, about the contest.
Oh, yes, and I have to tell you, I'll be honest with everyone listening, I hadn't a clue. I couldn't answer it. I thought I knew a lot, but Tuesday, tell us about the contest.
Well, I want to thank to all the listeners who really tried hard to get the answer correct on this one. And I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it really was, but they were really close. But you know what? We didn't get anybody that got it. And out of the book of The Encyclopedia of Ghosts and Spirits by Rosemary Ellen, I think it's called Guiley. It's Guiley, Guiley. Anyways, and it was on page 277. And it says there, plants associated with death. The dead and ghosts, the ancient Greeks and Romans considered parsley, the word parsley, to be sacred to the dead and placed on its grave. In the Celtic world, parsley acquired reputation for its bad luck due to the association with the dead. In the lore of Devon, England, for example, it is considered unlucky to transplant it, for that would cause death in the family and the devil would take control of the garden. It is most unlikely to be given parsley. Parsley is a folklore remedy for those who are unfortunate enough to witness a wild hunt, is what they call it, or results in blinding, swelling of the head, and even death. All one needs to do is ask the ghost for a bit of parsley.
Ooh. Now that gives a whole new meaning and a whole new way of looking at parsley, does it not?
It does. It sure does.
So is everyone going to go out and rush out and buy parsley, or are they going to start to grow parsley? And let me say that, Tuesday, if you ever hand me a handful of parsley, I'll know that you no longer like me.
Well, Angela, I have to get it from a ghost first for it to work. So if you know any ghost that's going to hand you a whole handful full of parsley, then you had better run for yourself, because you never know if it's going to be placed on your gravesite, on it. But so I appreciate all you listeners. We're going to have another contest. We'll bring up another contest question next week. And we've got a DVD out there. It's Peter James and the Ghost of Long Beach with his work of the Queen Mary, and it's autographed. So we need to get that out. We need to have somebody to win that. So it's a really good opportunity to get some of Peter's work. So on it, and we are nearing break here in just a few minutes on it. And I want to welcome everybody that's in the virtual auditorium. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate your support, and we've gotten lots of support from you guys, and it's we really appreciate it a lot.
Well, yes, absolutely. We have a full room right now, a lot of questions, and definitely a lot of comments. And, of course, a lot of people that are in the live interactive room, I know that they have shared information with one another, and, of course, they've shared information with us in the past. So I always love it that they are here to join us in the room. Well, Tuesday, with Dr. Barry Taft coming up, and can you give us a little bit of history to kind of set us up on where we're going with the show? I mean, as far as the Sharon Tate murders or Charles Manson himself.
Yes, I do. But real quickly, just so I don't forget, I want to wish a special happy birthday, even though it might have been a couple days ago, to Awakening. And it says I want to wish her a very, very, very special birthday. And I actually was reading up here to say happy birthday to Rick also, too. Rich is soon to be having a birthday coming up. If it's not today, then we wish birthday on it. Dr. Barry Taft will be on the subjects of the cases with the entity. We're going to talk about the case that he's working on now, which is actually, again, it's the Charles Manson murders with Sharon Tate up towards Beverly Hills, California, where Manson went ahead and murdered 4 people, and there was a lot more than that. But anyways, they had torn down all the homes in that area and built them. But the fact is that didn't seem to stop the Manson murders from terrifying other people. It seems like they're having a lot of activity up there. And they all associate with the murders from Manson. And although Manson is kind of a really creepy subject, but interesting enough that Dr. Barry Taff has been around in this field for a very long time. He's had some really intense cases. He's a really intelligent guy, actually, out there. So I'm looking forward to having him join us on it. And he also, too, has a tribute to a dear friend of his, Lisa, who actually worked on a lot of cases with him, who died from some cancer. And interesting enough, she had, as an adult, a lot of paranormal or poltergeist activity around her. Now, this is what the fact is so strange, is because she's an adult and she's not a child. So go figure about what that's about. But this poltergeist activity seemed to follow her everywhere she'd go.
Well, we're looking forward to interviewing Dr. Barry Taff on our next hour, and we are taking a break right now. So you are listening to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio.
Thank you.
It's the top of the hour, and Portal Paranormal Talk Radio with your hosts, Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas, will return in just a few moments. Go to www.portaltalkradio.homestead.com. Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, your show that allows you to talk about ghosts, ghost hunting, spirits, mediumship, and paranormal research. Everything paranormal on Portal Paranormal Talk Radio.
in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
What would you do if you knew all the things we know? Would you stand up for truth, or would you turn away too?
Get your dose of truth with the Truth Hurts radio show with your host, Charles Giuliani, Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. The Truth Hurts. Ignorance kills.
What would you do if you...
Perspective. We all have one. Our entire view of the world is based on it. Welcome to the Unabridged Universe. We invite you to set your perspective aside for a moment and join us on a refreshing journey into aspects of your universe that you may not have noticed from your particular point of view. Let host Jason Wilson be your guide into the corners of the universe you've never peeked into before. Who knows? You may just enjoy it and end up coming back for more. Take a stroll into the Unabridged Universe, live Saturdays from 7 to 9 Central Standard Time, only on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Do you like to ask questions about everything? Would you like to escape from your proverbial box? Just leap out and explore our world in ways you've never imagined? You can have that opportunity. As we grow and expand, new features will be added, allowing you to experience radio programming at a fresh new level. I invite you to join me, November Hansen, host of Voice of the People. Together, we can expand our horizons and peer into multifaceted possibilities. This program will broadcast live Saturday evenings on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Hi, this is James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio, inviting you to join me on the road to truth via the path of non-contradiction. Join us each week on Feet to the Fire, a show with the goals of examining a subject matter on its own merits and test how it stands up to the many possibilities found in reality, all without pre-drawn conclusions found in personal bias. No left or right wings here. No pounding the pulpit of ego-driven my way or the highway attitudes. But there are no free passes given either. Answers to questions are important, but equally important is the reasons and methods used to find the answer. Teleka Contradiction is the final judge here on Feet to the Fire. Sunday evenings, live. How do you listen? www.feet2fire.com for more information.
Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. Your chance to talk about ghosts, ghost hunting, spirits, miracles, mediumship, the strange, and paranormal research. With your hosts, Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas. Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. Go to www.portaltalkradio.homestead.com. Now here's your hosts of Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas.
Hello, welcome back to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Tuesday Miles, and I have a guest who is with us today, Dr. Barry Tabb. Hi, Barry, how are you?
Fine, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, I'm sure it'll be fun.
You know, we have our other host, Angela Thomas, but, you know, we're having a little bit of trouble having a three-way here. You know, of course, it's a girl's dream or a man's dream to have a three-way, but it seems to be working us out. So I'm going to do the first half of the show, and Angela was really excited to have you on as a guest, and so she's going to come in on the second half and drill you for some information that we wanted to know about. You know what, Barry? I always wanted to know, what does the doctor stand for?
I mean, where am I back with my...
Yes, that's it.
It's psychophysiology,
which
is the interrelationship of the brain to the body to behavior. So instead of going the medical route where you learn how to diagnose and prescribe and all that. I learned function, form and function. So you study neurology and anatomy and physiology and neuroanatomy and neurophysiology. And it's very similar to medical school, but the focus is on form and function and into the interrelationships between the brain, the body, and behavior versus just studying it for diagnosing and prescribing.
Have you been able to incorporate that in with being a paranormal investigator or a parapsychologist?
Yes. What we've learned more from the questions we've been asking people over the last 4 decades than we've learned from all the instrumentation we have available now, and of course way back when we had almost nothing. By asking the right question, we're seeing very intriguing patterns emerge, and they relate to neurophysiology and things that if someone would have thrown this at us 30, 40 years ago, we would have went, huh? What are you talking about? There seems to be a really strange dynamic between the human nervous system, central nervous system, the brain, and the environment in which we live. And if you're a particularly sensitive type of individual, and we don't know what that sensitive means yet, your body doesn't react well to changes in the environment, such as magnetic fields. And if there are changes that are over or above or below a certain point, it seems to trigger reactions in people. Like, for example, we've found that the majority of people who have poltergeist activity around them, not all, but the majority, tend to be either seizure-prone or epileptic. When they take the medication to quell the seizures or epilepsy, not only do the seizures and epilepsy disappear, but the phenomena goes away as well. And then when they get off meds, because the meds make them feel sick as well, like what else is new in medicine, right?
Right.
And they get off the meds and the seizures return, as do the phenomena. So there's something odd. Now, see, what's strange is the majority of poltergeist agents we're seeing, we've looked at, have this connection. However, the majority of epileptics are not poltergeist agents. So that means there's an unknown or missing variable in there, and we don't know what that is yet.
Well, interesting that you bring that up, because we were discussing that in the first half of the show, and regarding there, we didn't find there was a lot of discussion or documentation out there regarding the epilepsy. Do you feel that with a psychic that do you think that there's a difference between the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain, where the information for them experiencing some of this stuff?
It may not deal with hemispheric orientation, bilateral hemispheric response. It may have to deal with the way a particular individual's brain is wired electrochemically, or neurochemically, I should say. And, for example, we were working on a case from mid-2005 till late 2006 and in Beverly Hills, and about 2/3 of the people go into this particular location, which happened to have magnetic fields literally so high we could barely measure them. 2/3 of us chronically got ill only at this house. Myself, my colleague Barry Conrad, his girlfriend Lisa McIntosh, who unfortunately died last July, and a lot of us got very ill. A lot of the journalists up there, they would take me aside and they go, "Do you ever get sick when you come up here?" I said, "Every single time." The last time I was there was July 3rd of 2006. I spent the next day in the emergency room at Cedars-Sinai. That's how sick I got.
Mel, is this the same area that was associated with where the Manson murders were at?
Correct. It's literally a stone's throw down the street. And that site, if you go to the U.S. Geological Survey's website, you punch in the coordinates, the address, you'll see that it's listed as a geomagnetic anomaly site, which means that there's very strong magnetic fields there, the reason for which is unknown. The hills, those hills there, just north of Beverly Hills in Benedict Canyon, what is Beverly Hills technically, are way too young geologically to have iron in them. So that's fine. Then they're way too young to have, let's see what else would be, iron or magnetite. Mm-hmm. So it may be bauxite, magnetic bauxite. No, I mean, no, bauxite's a little bit. Magnetic, blanking out on the word, is another type of ore.
Right. But do you feel that with that amount of the EMF, which electronic magnetic field, the electric magnetic field, I think I'm saying that right, on it, and so do you think that played a role in people in Manson and what he did?
I doubt it. I've been asked this many times on a number of shows already, and here's what we believe. If you're the type of person that's sensitive to, it's called magnetic basalt. That's what I was looking for.
All right.
If you're sensitive to this, and not everyone is, by the way, we don't know why our people are and others are not. We have no idea what this means. But if you're sensitive, if you have a medical problem, it will exacerbate it. Let's say you have gastrointestinal problems. It'll make it worse. Cardiovascular, it'll make it worse. Cancer, it could make it worse. We do know from literature that's been published, not in the paranormal arena, but in electromedicine, that negatively polarized magnetic fields, if they're pulsed directly, can dramatically kill off cancer cells in the body while leaving normal cells intact without any side effects. However, a positively polarized field, if applied in the same manner, can exacerbate the cancer growth and increase the metastasis process. So we don't know why. There's all kinds of theories about what things may be going on, but we do know that at this particular location, Banyan Canyon, it seems to act as as an irritant for the central nervous system in some people, but not in others. And myself being one of them, I can tell you that the first time I was there, I got very ill. I mean, I basically passed out. And thank God, the owner of the house and his friend was behind me and grabbed me before I hit the floor. I just would have hurt myself. And Barry Conrad's girlfriend got very sick, Lisa. She was in remission at the time. Of course, had we known what nature, how unique this area was, which we did because we'd never been there before and hadn't taken measurements yet, we would never allowed her, let alone on the property, let alone in it. And she went back and she relapsed after that. Unfortunately, she died approximately a year later.
You would think that, and mind you, that Edison, which is our electric company here around here, do you know that they actually will not admit to the fact is that the EMF can make you sick. Their findings is what they say is that they have no documented proof as of yet. But the fact is that too much of EMF can actually make you
Well, first
sick.
of all, we have to make a distinction here. And the distinction is this. The energy fields, the magnetic fields we're measuring, electromagnetic fields at this particular location, are not alternating current. They're not AC, they're DC. Okay, DC fields are very different than AC fields. And all of humanly generated machines, everything we have in our world that runs, for the most part, generates electromagnetic fields at alternating current.
And is this when they go on investigations, they have these little tools in their hands that they're going around and they're reading the meters? Is this what you're picking up?
Well, I mean, there's meters that are more like toys, and there are meters that are more like engineering instruments. We have very good instrumentation. Unfortunately, it's very expensive.
Okay.
And so we had to put out a lot of money. But if you don't pay for, you get what you pay for.
Okay.
Now, here's the other problem. I want to make clear to people listening that these types of magnetic anomalies are not carcinogenic in and of themselves. There's no clear evidence that it will cause cancer in people if you're there for any particular time. However, if you have a predilection to it, you already have cancer, it could exacerbate the problem. No one else that's ever lived there or visited has had a problem. But of course, no one else that we know of went there they had been suffering from a cancer called multiple myeloma, which is an insidious and highly lethal form of bone cancer.
Right.
For which there's no cure. There is a potential cure or a way to intervene. It's a magnetic therapy, but the FDA unfortunately doesn't like to deal with anything that isn't pharmaceutical because you can't patent it.
What type of activities did you find in the house there?
Well, let's see. The most obvious and the most simplistic of devices, a compass. Any compass you bring in there, instead of pointing north where it should point, it would point south or east or west. And we had magnetic fields anywhere from, in the DC range, this is direct current, up to about 40 cycles per second. Instead of going normal, which is about half a Gauss, we were seeing something like 1.7 to 3 to 5 Gauss, which is not good, and especially since the majority of it was positively polarized. In terms of the paranormal phenomena, let's see, disembodied voices, objects being thrown at people, objects being apported, moved from one part of the house to another, objects displaying magnetic fields that are not magnetic, things like plastic and aluminum that are not magnetic. They've been, I don't know.
Wow.
So what's causing it? And unlike most locations, the more people that were there, the more likely it was to respond. Most of these environments we've been to over the last 40 years, the more people there, the less likely anything's going to happen, especially if the researchers have their instrument out. The first night I was there with instruments, July 19th of 2005, one of our batteries failed in one of our devices, which is normal. It's a 9-volt. So we take it out, we X it out, we scratch an X into it. We threw it in the garbage in front of the house as we would do anywhere else. And I went back to the case and got another probe for this instrument. And about 40 minutes later, I went back to change instruments, and the same battery that I had just disposed of was back in my locked case, bobbing on one of the partitions.
Oh, wow.
And that's in a port.
Do you think activity is just at this one particular house? Is it
well,
the whole block?
We
that you
don't
might
know because the neighbors, both north and south, are not too communicative with regard to their experiences, if any. So most people don't want to acknowledge this because they're afraid of being labeled nuts or crazy. And instead of saying, the more we understand and talk about it, the more we'll know and the less we'll be afraid. But we did walk up the street, around the street. The readings were not as intense, but we approached the area where the old house was where Sharon Tate and her friends were murdered, and we went up to the gate, and the reading spiked again there. And at one point, I remember, this was the first night, I felt someone, we were in one of the bottom rooms of the 3-story house, where this particular man lives, and I literally felt a hand on my shoulder like, hi. And I turned thinking it was one of my friends, Paul, who was with our group. I turned, he's way at the end of the corridor, no one near me. All right, so and at that point, we got a spike in the reading. The magnetic field jumped way high. And this particular room, called the earthen wall room, the compasses would spin like tops. I mean, they would just spin. And then we were outside walking towards where the old home was, a new mansion was being built at the time. And again, I felt the touch. The instrument spiked, and we got some colorful, very interesting colored orbs over my shoulder that, of course, were not visible to the naked eye. What they are, God only knows. But what else in the house? The apparitions have been seen. Women, men.
Do you think that these were... Let me remind our listeners, because they were asking, a couple of them asking about exactly who you are. We are now talking to Dr. Barry Taff, and Dr. Barry Taff is one of the lead investigators that are working on a case that involves the area in which Charles Manson lived, and with the activity that's been going on there, along with the very famous entity case that was involved a woman, Corlita?
No, the woman's... Okay, forget the name in the book and the movie.
Okay.
The woman's real name in the entity case was Doris Bither, B-I-T-H-E-R.
Okay.
The woman's name in the movie was a fictionalized character that Frank DiFilippo wrote for the book.
Okay. And you did some work also with the San Pedro case, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I met Barry Conrad just a year earlier, 1988, and we were already working together, and thank God he's a cameraman and very devoted to this, as I am, and much of us are, and went out, talked to this woman, Jackie Hernandez. This is August of 1989 in San Pedro, very hot, muggy. She's telling us these experiences, and we recorded some strange, I guess, luminous anomalies. There were some viscous liquids dripping in the cupboards.
Was that like a resin? Did that look like a resin to you?
No, it looked like a lot of things, but the analysis of it determined it was human blood plasma.
You're kidding.
So why is that coming out of the walls and falling onto the floor? And it was human blood plasma with a high copper and iodine content. It was male human blood plasma. I mean, lights were going on and off. Things were being moved around the house. And then early on in the case, one of our assistants, a guy named Jeff Wheatcraft, he was up in the attic, and suddenly we heard like yelling, and I wasn't there that time because my father had gotten ill, and basically Gary Bame, another one of our assistants, the cameraman, he fired several quick shots at Jeff, and around Jeff Wheatcraft's neck is a lanyard in a bowline knot, and it's picking him up over one of the rafters on a boat, a very thick nailer boat, and yet there was no one there.
Did anybody in the house see any rope that was up there? Or?
No, we had already gone through the attic. There were some old fruit boxes and some junk, just seashells, but nothing like that we could see. And Jeff was traumatized. He came out of the attic, and he had a rope burn in his neck, and you think that would have scared off anyone.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It did. Jeff was pretty, because Jeff was a big skeptic. He didn't know what was going on, as if we did. And the case evolved, and then he went up north with Barry to follow Jackie up to Weldon, which is several hundred miles north of L.A.
And this is because the girl, Jackie, she had moved from the location?
She moved, it moved with her. This is classic of poltergeist activity. Most poltergeist activity, if not all of it, is associated with people as opposed to locations. Haunting seems to be location-oriented, but again, we don't know what we're dealing with here. So they followed her up to Weldon. I, again, couldn't make it because my father was still quite ill. And they're sitting around. Jeff is picked up and thrown into the wall like a rag doll. He was about 6'1", 200 pounds. Picked up, thrown in the wall, chair at him, go up, the chair drops down, he arches up, slams into the wall where it met the ceiling and hits the floor out cold. And everyone thought he was dead. And fortunately for everyone, especially Jeff, he was not. So what was that? Now, see, what's really interesting about the San Pedro case is longevity. And secondly, there were a lot of luminous anomalies, some of which we captured, Barry Conrad did. Part of it, some of it she captured with her own cameras or cameras we supplied her with. And some of these are extraordinary. They show clear, three-dimensional, I wouldn't call them more, they're plasma, for lack of a better term, the fourth state of matter. And these are dimensional, they're overlapping, they're casting shadow on each other. Repeated images coming down from the ceiling, hovering over the carpet, but what's the source? So she moves up to Weldon and follows her there. It attacks Jeff, and then comes back down here, continues. I thought, that's odd.
And he keeps going back for more. That's what interests me.
Well, it ended,
and all of our viewers are actually saying, I would have been out of there the first time.
Jeff was traumatized. And then we're not done. When Jackie moved back down there, she came over to Barry's old home in Studio City, and a couple times after she was there, phenomena broke out after Jackie left the house. And I was there on a number of occasions. So we were witness to this. Objects moving, machines going on and off, objects levitating. And Jeff was again thrown in the wall, but not as intensely as he was up in Weldon. And he never voiced concern, but I think he was severely traumatized. I mean, I think he had what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think he took it out on Barry because at this point he withdrew from our group. As anyone with a brain would do. And but who do you complain to? Who do you voice your fears and angers at? You can't go to a psychologist or psychiatrist. They'll think you're crazy.
Absolutely. On it. One of our listeners wants to know on it about your about any photos that you that you take on your cases on it. Is there a place that you've got them in print or online or something?
I think on Art Bell's website that maybe still have some of the pictures from the Kennedy case in San Pedro. Okay. The Kennedy case, we had a ball of light flying. It's a black and white photo, and that was 1974. And we see it moving from right to left in the frame, and there's a tail on it, clear luminous tail. Another shot, which is the most famous one, is Doris. It's a huge arc of light framing her, and she's beneath it cowering.
And that was on the entity case, is that correct?
Pardon?
The entity case with the one with the arc on it?
Right.
Okay, yeah, I think I come across that it's like a black and white photo that's online somewhere, but I do think you come across on that.
And what's really impressive about this arc of light, it seems to represent time-lapse of the flying lights. And behind the arc, two walls meet at a 90-degree angle. So if this were a projected event, meaning someone was faking it, the light would be bent in accordance with the walls, but it was not. It was in free space. And we have another picture immediately after that, two arcs, and they're inverted. They're at 90-degree angles to each other, which we gave it to Popular Photography, and in May of 1976, the West Coast editor, Adrian Vance, published the first and only article dealing with the paranormal in Popular Photography. He dealt with the entity case, and he said he couldn't even begin to guess what could have caused this, because the way the lenses and single-lens reflex cameras are developed or designed with the optical glass, these images would be impossible. So then what caused them?
That is very interesting. We've got about 30 seconds left. We're just going to go for a short break and bring Angela back in on this, and I will come in on the end of it, too, on it, Barry. I wanted to ask you also, too, with the fact is that with these hauntings, and we'll go back to the Manson case, so I really want to talk a lot more about that, but the fact is that with the Manson case is on it, and the activity and everything, I'm just wondering if Manson feels any of that activity himself.
I wouldn't know. I really don't care. I mean, my concern is that, in order for me to return to that house, I would have to build myself a suit made out of something called mu metal. It's an alloy that stops the magnetic fields from penetrating it. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up going to the hospital. So,
you don't risk your health on that, Barry.
No, if I'm dying, what good does it do anyone, including me?
You did get a lot of documentation on that.
Oh yeah, a lot of it. And it's like I said, this is the high water mark. This is the new benchmark. Every time I think we're not going to go further, we go further. We learn more in this one case than we've learned in the last 38 years.
Okay, we're going out to break.
Okay.
And I believe I can say
It's the top of the hour in Portal Paranormal Talk Radio with your hosts Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas will return in just a few moments. Go to www.portaltalkradio.homestead.com. Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, your show that allows you to talk about ghosts, ghost hunting, spirits, mediumship, and paranormal research. Everything paranormal on Portal Paranormal Talk Radio.
Questions about everything? Would you like to escape from your proverbial box? Just leap out and explore our world in ways you've never imagined? You can have that opportunity. As we grow and expand, new features will be added, allowing you to experience radio programming at a fresh new level. I invite you to join me, November Hanson, host of Voice of the People. Together, we can expand our horizons and peer into multifaceted possibilities. This program will broadcast live Saturday evenings on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, your chance to talk about ghosts, ghost hunting, spirits, miracles, mediumship, the strange, and paranormal research. With your hosts, Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas. Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. Go to www.portaltalkradio.homestead.com. Now here's your hosts of Portal Paranormal Talk Radio, Tuesday Miles and Angela Thomas.
Welcome to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. Thank you for listening. We're speaking to Dr. Barry Taff. Doctor, I heard the interview that Prism was giving Tuesday Miles, and something interesting struck me, and you had mentioned the dynamics between the human brain and the environment. Do you believe that affects the sympathetic nervous system?
Well, I mean, my guess would be it affects the entire nervous system. We don't know to what degree because there haven't been enough studies and not enough people are affected and the environments keep changing, but all we know is like this last case that we're speaking of from Beverly Hills. It seemed to act as an irritant for the central nervous system. And once you irritate that, everything else sort of, it trickles down to everything else.
Well, now, is that something that remains that way? In other words, if the nervous system is affected, does it stay affected forever and ever, or is it only affected during, let's say, a poltergeist or a negative entity?
I really don't know how to answer it except by saying that I was at the Beverly Hills case 21 times over the course of 18 months. And every single time I was there, I got sick. Not some of the time, not a percentage of the time, every single time.
Mm.
So that tells me that whatever the way I'm built versus the way someone else is built, may be that my body is much more sensitive to this type of a geomagnetic environment than the other person is. Because we had people, what are you talking about? I don't feel sick here. Yet we had crews that came up there from, who came up there? Trying to think. A crew from Britain, a show called Dead Famous. And they wanted to conduct an experiment. I said, I'll do one. What is it? I said, if I tell you what it is, it's not an experiment. So they came there, and there were about 7 people. The exception of one person, they were all sick within less than an hour.
Oh, goodness.
And it was interesting, one of the ladies there, a really nice woman named Dee, she looks like a young, famous actress from the golden era, and really nice lady. She said, this house is evil. And I go, why are you saying that? And she said, Rhonda Fleming, that's who I remember, a very attractive woman. And she said, evil was making me sick. I said, I don't think the house is making you sick or spirits are. I think your body doesn't like the energy here. And then she said, what do you mean? I said, well, if the house gave you an orgasm, you'd think it was healing you. So I said, it's all related to how your body reacts to that environment. There were some sensitives brought up by this group from up north in California, or brought down, I should say, and they all got sick. Some of them got very ill, and they had to leave. And we had other crews there over time from other groups, cameramen, they got sick. People helping us with the monitoring of the environment, they got sick. And you don't know, there's no way of knowing up front who will or who won't get sick, because we don't know what constitutes sensitivity to this yet. What is interesting is with the San Pedro case, the woman, Jackie, we met her in San Pedro on 11th Street, 1989, and she moved out, okay, and we assumed it was with her. Well, news crew went back there. The place was vacant for quite some time, and this is before the news even got out about it. And they went in there, and their camera kept quitting. Their Betacam system would started failing. They went out, came back on. Went in, it failed. Went out, it came. So there's something there. Then another family moved in. They had phenomena there. Now this brings up a really interesting possibility, and the analogy is simple, and it's a biological analogy. You go. Let's say you're perfectly healthy. You go to your friend's house. They got a cold. They got the flu, but you got to go over there to help them. You make sure you don't touch anything, and if you do, you don't rub your nose, your eyes. But you come home, everything's fine. You did pick it up, and a few days later, you're sick, and your whole family is sick. Well, yeah, we understand that. We know what that's called, contagion. Okay? It may be that this energy, whatever we're looking at, may have the same effect, meaning that if you go into a certain environment that has this unique environmental, I guess, electromagnetic signature, there may be another energy as well involved we don't know about, and if you're susceptible, it infects you, for lack of a better term. And I've coined this a psychovirus, because there's no other term to describe it. And then you leave, and then you continue to propagate it away from the source, and then eventually your body lets it go, and it stops happening.
Well, so with that said, would you say that the one that is ill with that, if they left that unique environment and went into, let's say, their home environment, do you think that they will carry that energy onto others in their, let's say, home life?
It could. It depends on many variables. Again, we don't know what we're dealing with here, but So this is the blind leading the blind, so to speak. It depends how sensitive your body is or the person is to this type of or nature of energy, and how much of it your body absorbs, and then how much of it you continue to propagate away from the source. Most of the time it seems to die off rather quickly. But again, other people around you, if they're sensitive, can pick it up. But we don't know what it is.
Right.
I'm trying to describe this in biological terms because that's the only... See, in science, your theory must conform to your data. You don't make your data conform to your theory. That's quackery. So we're trying to figure out what's going on. But looking at the patterns that have emerged, longitudinal patterns that have emerged over the last, let's say, just 40 years, the data is fairly consistent, but we don't understand what it's telling us yet. We know that, as I said earlier, there seems to be a dynamic between living people and the environment to trigger these events. And there also may be something else. I mean, maybe traumatic past events leave an imprint on the environment, and under the right set of conditions, it gets played back, like a VCR or a DVD. The question is, what are those conditions? And I'm convinced of this place in Beverly Hills that if we had money and time and shielding, we might be able to artificially recreate the proper environment there to modify it. And there's about a dozen variables electromagnetically we could play with. If we've got the right set of variables, we could sit back and watch it and videotape it. Wouldn't have to wait. It would just occur while we're there.
Right.
Because it might kill some of us in the process, which means I wouldn't be there. But I mean, it would be very costly. A lot of time would be involved. But the amount of data, what we've learned, this could be like, as I called it, this could be the Mount Everest of hauntings, the ultimate field laboratory. And we had another one like that in 1976 on a street called Hollymont. And some young guy came into the lab at UCLA, told us about these extraordinary events that had transpired a couple of days earlier. He was up at a party there, objects being thrown at people, chairs being thrown. So we went there, and it was just one thing after another. I mean, objects moving around, phones being thrown at people, coins dropping out of the air when there's not just thousands of coins falling, spontaneous combustion of matter.
Amazing.
And things would apport through one locked door to another room and then to another room. And I mean, at one point we were living in there because the original owner moved out during the escrow. And we got to live there, so I was trying to repair the upstairs main bathroom shower. The old, they had like multiple heads because they didn't work. So I was brought up a toolbox from where the laundry room was on the first floor. This was on the third floor, the shower. So put it on the tile floor. I'm alone in the house. My colleague is back in Westwood and at UCLA, and I turn back for the tool chest, and it's gone. I went, what? So I go back. It's right where I got it from. And that was in seconds. So, again, I didn't get sick there. No one got sick there. We didn't have the instruments we have today, but I'd certainly like to have taken those in there to see what the measurements are.
So it disappeared. Did it ever reappear?
Yeah, it disappeared from the floor behind me, and
right.
It reappeared back in the laundry room where it came from.
Ah, I see. Now, Barry, you had mentioned about people taking on, getting sick from the energy there.
Now,
let me ask you.
Let me make specific. Taking on the energy, getting sick and taking on the energy are two different things. So the majority of poltergeist people do not get sick from the phenomena, as far as we know. This particular case in Beverly Hills, some of us who are so sensitive to it, it may make us sick, and some of us. I have had no stories on this case of people propagating it away from the source, but we've had that in the St. Peter case, as I said.
Well, being in those type of environments that you've been in, have you ever stumbled across an event that has taken place where perhaps a poltergeist or even the opposite being, let's say, a residual energy, have you ever noticed that an individual would take on that particular, let's say, poltergeist energy and manifest through their bodies?
Can you be more specific? I don't want to know.
Well, in other words, have you ever experienced, or has any of your crew members ever experienced going into a unique environment where, let's say, there's a poltergeist or another type of energy there, and it, let's say, possesses the body or manifests something, some type of personality or anger or hostility by utilizing that individual's living body.
Are you talking about like a possession?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Have you seen any type of poltergeist or any type of energy that would have used that living body to manifest or to act out and behave differently?
I personally have never run across this in the course of 38 years of work.
I see.
No,
I see.
Again, poltergeist, again, the term means noisy spirit, but we assume that the evidence suggests that for the most part, if not all the time, this is a psychokinetic manifestation coming from living people that have a strange interaction with the environment. Hauntings, on the other hand, seem to be triggered by violent traumatic death.
Right.
And I'm sure there may not be the line between them we think there are, but we look at the data and look for patterns. And we had a case last November in Covina. Yeah, West Covina. Long and short, go to the house. I walked in there, felt that same kind of sickness I felt in Beverly Hills, but not as intensely. The DC fields we were measuring were they were normal. The AC fields were so high they were like off. We couldn't measure them. And the woman said that her husband and kids moved in years ago, was a fixer-upper. Suddenly her husband starts going ballistic, going postal, and he tries to kill his wife and kids. They put him in therapy and, never figured out what was wrong, and then he ended up killing himself in the house, exactly where the first owner killed himself in the house. Woman stayed there for a while. Meanwhile, in the midst of this, there was all these events going on, objects flying around, banging noises, apparitions, people being touched, disembodied voices. The woman, who's very athletic, suddenly gets sick. She develops epilepsy. What a surprise. Which means she was predisposed to it. Strong magnetic fields there triggered this in her. I said, forget the phenomena here. Just get out. Why? It's because your body's telling you there's nothing like it here. Move. Whether she'll be healed from the epilepsy once removed from the field, I don't know, because there's not enough data on this yet. But we do know that certain things can trigger epilepsy in people who are predisposed. Flashing lights, certain types of magnetic fields can trigger it. Noises can trigger it. Certain smells can trigger it. But this is a case where there's this mix between one level of medical science and the paranormal. And thank God we know what to ask. And when this woman finally said, there's something else I have to tell you. What? Well, I'm epileptic now. And my colleague, Barry Conrad, turned to me and with like a world rise, here we go again. So it just we keep running into this over and over. Now, what's even more disturbing is a healthy percentage, I don't know precisely the way, but people in general are epileptic or seizure prone, but they'll never know it. They could live 100 years, never have a seizure, because it never got triggered at them. Doesn't mean they're not epileptic. It means they just never got triggered. And I'm sure if we could do the right types of medical workups on a lot of these people, we'd find they are seizure prone or epileptic. But again, as I said in the first segment of the show, why is it that the majority of people with epilepsy or who are seizure prone aren't poltergeist agents, but the majority of poltergeist agents happen to be epileptic or seizure prone? Why? We don't know.
Well, there seems to be a common thread there, Barry, because, in my own psychic work, I've run across many peers in the field, and quite a few of them have discussed their own histories, especially in childhood, of having epilepsy. So that would be a fascinating report to hear about the link between those with epilepsy and those who then develop epilepsy in, let's say, a unique environment like you were describing the woman just now, and, of course, the husband repeating the same type of history. Let me ask you, as a doctor and as a scientist, and I know that you've, studied all of this energy, can you say beyond a doubt that there is evil out there? I know a lot of people don't agree that there's anything labeled as evil, but in your own experiences, can you say truly that you feel that there are evil energies or good versus bad?
Well, I wouldn't label things like that. See, evil is, again, the interpretation by the people in the situation. Some people as evil is not to others. Anything that hurts people, that harms them, that puts them in jeopardy emotionally, physically, intellectually, in any way, them or their family, could be interpreted as evil. But again, if one is foolish enough to stand behind a jet engine when it turns on, you're going to get hurt. The engine isn't evil. You being whoever, wrong for standing there. It may be that we don't understand what we're dealing with, so we label like that woman in I told you in the house in Beverly Hills, that sensitive name, Dee. Yeah, the house is evil. Why is the house evil? Because the house is making her feel sick. The house healed her. She thinks it was fantastic.
Sure.
So it's all relative to the situation. In all dealings, everything in our lives, from the beginning of the human culture to well of the future, there are good people, there are bad people. Just like there are short people, there are tall people. There are fat people, there are thin people. There are people who are really very attractive, there are people who aren't. It's the gamut. And a lot of times, it's people are in the wrong place at the wrong time, and these things happen. I mean, a lot of times we had cases where they were finding money floating down from the ceiling, and they never could track it. I said, well, you're not worried about this? They go, no, they're thousands of dollars. $10 bills, 20s, 50s, 100s. I go, you're not reporting this to IRS. I go, well, then what's the problem?
Well, you got to wonder where the money's coming from. Where are they getting it from?
Right, well, they lived off it, and then when their kids moved out, it all stopped. That was just one of many things. This was like in the early 70s. This case came to us, and it was in Van Nuys here in the San Fernando Valley. But, again, there were other things. Whenever the woman was in the laundry room, something would pinch her and fondle her and throw towels at her, and she'd freak out. But it never hurt her. But, again, the way we interpret things will determine whether something's good or bad. But I think we all assume that if we're harmed in any way, shape, or form, that can't be good. But, again, was it harm because we unintentionally or unknowingly put ourselves in the face of something, or just because whatever we're dealing with had intelligence and it wanted to hurt us? We don't know.
Sure. Well, either way, it is mental anguish, is it not?
No, but it also is very subjective. Again, we had a case in '93, again in Beverly Hills, and we're coming out of a building, Barry, myself, and Jeff, and these iron pipes came flying out of the third floor window.
Iron pipes?
And just dropped maybe inches from us. I mean, they would have killed us if they hit us.
Absolutely.
So, was it evil? I mean, a couple knives flew at us in the house and got stuck on the floor. Some furniture was moving around. We walked through the room, we heard this noise, we turned back, and the furniture had been moved around on its own. Evil? I don't know.
Well,
it didn't hurt us, but I mean, we lost access to the house because it was sold, and the next owner had problems, and he sold it, the next owner had problems, and they sold it. And this isn't far from the house I was speaking of earlier in Beverly Hills, probably just a few minutes away. Get that.
So now what do you do to protect yourself going in on an investigation?
Other than this case in Beverly Hills I spoke of, and the case in Covina, I haven't really had a problem. Nothing has really bothered me. I mean, some places just feel strange, but the Beverly Hills case that I spoke of earlier is the only case I've ever been on that made me physically ill. And it wasn't because of the owner. The owner's a great guy, really nice, he was very pleasant, and it was the only person we've ever dealt with in almost 4 decades who kept bringing us food. And look, we're not here for that. No, he was very magnanimous and very helpful, and very friendly, and very gracious in his hospitality. So it wasn't him, but just the energy there. My body didn't like, nor did Barry Conrad, nor did his girlfriends, and many others. So I kept a log of who was going there and how many of us that went there got ill or responded this way, and it varied from day to day, from week to week, from month to month.
Well, now, what is the typical average time that you spend on an investigation? Let's say, for example, where Sharon Tate lived and died.
It depends. Most cases, you're out there once, you do your interviews, you take your measurements with your instruments, spend a couple hours there. Unless it's a case of high frequency and magnitude, it's not worth pursuing because you could spend years there and never run into anything. And if it's a byproduct of the people living there, which most of the time it is, the presence of strangers would inhibit whatever's going on. So it occurs when you're gone, but not when you're there. Like the case in Rancho Cucamonga a week ago. Really nice family, husband, wife, and 3 girls. Classic poltergeist activity. Measurements were normal except for the air ion charges were very high of the wrong polarity. We couldn't explain it because the air conditioning was on. That produces positive ions, yet the fields were negatively polarized, which we can't explain because that shouldn't happen with air conditioning. So I don't know. But most cases aren't even worth... I mean, the chance of you running into this stuff when you're there as a researcher, as an investigator, is literally astronomical. It would be like going to, this is a morbid analogy, but it'd be like going to an airport with a camcorder and expecting to see a plane crashing and capturing it in a video.
So how often would one want to go back if, let's say, a lot of those people that are just now getting into the paranormal investigation fields, what would you recommend, or how often would you recommend them to return to the site? I know you as a doctor are on a different agenda, but for those people that do have time, how often should they follow that same environment?
Again, it depends on the variables. In other words, if the frequency of activity is high, things are occurring daily, like several times a day, fine, you may want to going back a number of times. If it occurs once every couple of weeks or months, I mean, you have a better chance of winning the lottery 3 times in a row. Again, ask questions. When does it generally occur? Where does it generally occur? Who's present when it occurs? What's transpiring just before it occurs? If they have kids, their ages, do they have any medical problems? And the list of questions go on and on. Medical problems, medications being used, frequency, dosage of medication, backgrounds to people, do they have any phenomena prior to living in this case, or this house, if they did, of what type, and then ask about the children. And usually it's the dynamics between the kids and the adults. But again, each case is unique and has to be evaluated based on that particular case itself. So there is no one thing. You just have to use common sense. If the reason I went back to the Beverly Hills house 21 times was the level of activity was so high. I mean, if something didn't happen, that was the unusual. It was, almost every time we were there, something was happening. I mean, either we'd catch something on our video instruments, imaging, or we'd get something on audio, or every time we were there, we got measurements that were just sort of off the wall. And one time a storm was coming in. We were there with another group, I forget what film group it was, and the electrical field jumped to several thousand volts per meter. And my skin started to burn. I went, that's it.
Oh, no.
I'm out, and I just, we were there with another film crew, and the producer was thrown in the wall, pushed into the wall, and the cameraman got sick, and another camera crew, the camera really from KCOP here, UPN network, he got sick, kept crossing himself, but he wanted to leave, and then the truck pulled up a microwave, those transmitters for a live broadcast, and the truck crashed electronically. They had to bring up a second truck across the street.
Dr. Tass, we are running out of time. Thank you very, very much for your valuable information. I certainly hope that you can return because we could spend hours and hours on this subject. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And to all our listeners out there, Tuesday Miles would like to dedicate, and I myself would like to dedicate this show to Lisa McIntosh, who made such an important difference in the studies of poltergeist activity, and she will be dearly missed. She was born in 1963 and passed in 2006. Thank you all for listening to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm your host, Angela Thomas, along with Tuesday Miles. Good evening.